mention that the following meeting is held during the COVID-19 emergency declaration, will be conducted as virtual meeting in accordance with Ohio's open meetings laws amended by Sub-House Bill 197. The public may observe these meetings on YouTube and on Cleveland Channel 20. For more information, you can please go to the City Council website. No need to call the roll today because we're not hearing legislation. Would like to let you know that Councilman Joe Jones has requested an excused absence from today due to a family situation that he's dealing with. Today, we are going to be hearing our 6th of our 7 set series on Cleveland Public Power. Today, we're going to be talking about Cleveland Public Power's operations. Next week wraps it up with their capital projects. And before we get started, Director, I know last week's meeting went kind of long and we kind of ended a little hectically because we're trying to push the time limit and everything. But I wanted to mention the presentation last week on the purchase power, the rates and the energy adjustment charge. That presentation that you guys provided was probably one of the better presentations that I've ever seen come across Cleveland City Council. It was informative and very well put together. And I just wanted to give kudos to whoever it was to put that together. And I know that it wasn't an easy thing to get put together. The staff over there worked diligently. I'm assuming that they worked diligently on that. And it was a very good presentation and it was very informative and a lot of information last week. So I just wanted to publicly thank DPU and whoever worked on that. And with that being, you're welcome. And with that being said, all the council members should have received their presentation for today, which is on operations of Cleveland Public Power. So with that being said, I'd like to turn it over to Director Davis. Director?
Okay, good morning, Mr. Chairman, council members. I thank you for acknowledging that with regard to last week's committee meeting. It was a comprehensive and robust presentation, and we were glad to put that together. So the team of CPP, nobody does anything by themselves, so the total team themselves, I'd like to, and I've already basically thanked them for their hard work and due diligence where that's concerned. Today, we're going to talk about the operations of CPP. And so I would just start off by saying that Cleveland Public Power is a 300 megawatt system, which ranks as the largest municipally owned electric utility in the state of Ohio, and maybe even in the country. CPP's electrical footprint extends throughout the city, providing reliable energy to approximately 74,000 residential, commercial, and industrial customers. The system is comprised of approximately 438 circuit, which feeds about 33 substations throughout the city. CPP also serves and maintains approximately 61,000 streetlights throughout the city of Cleveland. And as you well know, we are converting those to LEDs with the smart photo cells and adaptive controls. So with that, Rich Barton will do the honors today with the presentation of operations and get into a whole lot more detail than I can. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Barton.
Unmute. All right, and there we are.
Can we put the presentation on the screen?
Yeah, am I good to share? I need permission to share. Are we good? There we go. Okay. All right, we're good to go. Good morning, I'm Rich Barton, and this morning I'm going to tell you about the operations section of Cleveland Public Power. The operations section is responsible for delivering electricity to 74,000 plus customers of CPP, as well as 61,000 streetlights. We provide all the maintenance to existing facilities and the construction of new distribution facilities to serve our existing customers. Our crews construct all the facilities needed to provide service to new buildings that are being constructed in Cleveland, as well as facilities necessary to connect CEI customers desiring to switch to Cleveland Public Power. Employees in the operations section of CPP's budget account for 76% of the total number of employees.
Mr. Barton.
We operate out of 4 facilities: the Tom L. Johnson Building, which is located at 1300 Lakeside, the East Side Service Center, which is located at 743 East 140th, the West Side Service Center, which is at 2490 West 41st Street, and our Meter Services Center, which is over at 1735 St. Clair Avenue.
Mr. Barton.
Our trouble section has dispatch facilities that are located in 1300
The screen is not moving.
Avenue.
The screen is, thank you.
Trouble calls are taken there and trouble crews are dispatched to restore service. We have 3 two-person trouble crews that are on duty, 3 shifts, 24/7, 465 days a year. A line foreman is on duty at each shift and aids in their efforts. 2 of the crews operate out of the West Side Service Center, and 1 of the crews operates out of our East Side Service Center. We have 1 streetlight night bulbing crew that operates out of each of the service center, providing bulbing services on the night shift. Our power dispatch center is located at 1300 Lakeside. They utilize SCADA, which is supervisory control and data acquisition. We operate that system based on NERC and PJM guidelines, and our certified transmission operators monitor and they operate the 138,000 volt bulk electric transmission system.
Director,
They also monitor and
if we could
control
interrupt.
our distribution substation equipment, and there is at least 1 electric transmission operator that's on duty 24/7, 365 days a year.
can you hear us?
The East and West Side service centers each have line crews that work in general geographic areas. The line crews on the East Side Center cover the Northeast and the East sections of Cleveland, and the line crews on the West Side cover the West Side, the Southeast Side, and the downtown sections of Cleveland. These line crews provide all the maintenance and new construction that are required for our customers. In addition to the normal complement of 2 line crews, the East Side Service Center also houses 2 street lighting repair crews, and they also do street lighting construction. There are 3 underground construction and repair crews that operate out of our East Side Service Center. The street lighting and underground construction crews perform their work on a citywide basis. One of our 2 tree trimming crews also operates out of the East Side Service Center. We have 3 heavy-duty mechanics that keep our fleet running, and they operate out of the center. And there's also a storeroom that maintains materials and supplies for all the crews that operate out of that facility. The West Side Service Center has 4 line crews that are available for maintenance and new construction. We also have 4 cable splicing crews that operate out of the center. Our electricians who maintain and test our substation equipment are situated out of the West Side Service Center. The cable splicers and the electricians perform their work on a citywide basis. Our other tree trimming crew is operating out of our West Side Service Center. We have 3 heavy-duty mechanics, and the heavy-duty mechanic foremen operate out of the West Side Service Center and keep the trucks that are assigned to that center on the road. Our main storeroom is also located at the West Side Service Center. We also have a transformer shop, which is responsible for the inventory of all our transformers. They also maintain and repair our transformers, as well as our automatic throwover switches. Our Meter Service Center houses all the employees involved in installing, maintaining, testing all of our electric revenue meters. The meters are read monthly by 2 vans that drive throughout our service area, automatically retrieving the meter reads. Crews from the Meter Service Center block and unblock meters for customers that are moving in or moving out. And when we're not in a pandemic, they're also blocking meters for non-payment and then unblocking those meters once the customer has made a sufficient payment for that service. Meter construction crews install residential and commercial meters for new construction and for the takeover of CEI customers. They also repair damaged meter installations, providing new meter pipes, meter cases, whatever's necessary to get the customer back in service. There's a storeroom on the site that provides material for the crews that perform that work. Our operations section is responsible for maintaining all the transmission and distribution facilities. Cleveland Public Power has 4 138,000 volt interconnections with First Energy. These are the links that provide the pathways for power to flow into Cleveland Public Power's system from our various power suppliers. The 4 interconnections are located, our Lake Road, which is located at 5251 North Marginal Road, which is what you would know as the plant. Our Ridge Road substation, which is located at 3727 Ridge Road. That's actually on the grounds of the city's Ridge Road waste facility. Our Nottingham substation, which is located at 1302 Chardon Road, next to the Nottingham water treatment plant. And our Pofolk substation, which is located at 9010 Holton Avenue. In addition to the interconnections, we have 138,000 volt transmission lines that are internal to our system. They distribute the electricity to our substations, and they provide redundancy and reliability. There's 138,000 volt underground oil-filled pipe type cable that runs from our Lake Road substation to our West 41st Street substation, stopping off at the Division Avenue substation to provide service to that facility. We also have overhead sections of 138,000 transmission line. There's one that connects our West 41st Street substation with our Ridge Road substation. And those 2 circuits provide the redundancy between the Ridge Road interconnection and the Lake Road interconnection. Overhead transmission lines also connect our Nottingham, Collinwood, 9 Mile, Northeast, East, Southeast, East Industrial, and Lake Road substations. They provide redundancy between the Nottingham interconnection, the Pofolk interconnection, and our Lake Road interconnection.
What's happening? They said they were trying to get him to stop because they was asking you a question.
Okay. Are there any questions? I guess there's questions at this point.
No, just keep going, Mr. Barton.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Shannon.
Under construction and almost completed is the southern transmission line with overhead portions along railroad right-of-way and the underground portion down Denison Avenue from Harvard to nearly Ridge Road. That'll provide redundancy between our Pofolk interconnection and our Ridge Road interconnection. And you can see the outline of our 138 volt transmission system. The blue are the existing transmission lines. The red is where the new southern transmission line is being constructed and is almost completed. You can see the, can you go back? You can see this portion here is the underground portion. That's the oil-filled pipe type cable that runs from Lake Road to Division Avenue and then over to 41st Street. We have 33 neighborhood substations that provide service to our customers through, next slide, that are scattered throughout the neighborhoods. The next slide will show you where they are in proximity to the interconnections as well as their physical proximity to neighborhoods in Cleveland. We have about 39 miles of 138,000 volt transmission lines, which form the backbone of our system. We have 260 miles of 13.8 distribution lines. Those are the voltages that we used in the expansion area, primarily in the southeast portion of Cleveland. We have 150 miles of 11,500 volt distribution lines. Those voltages are used to connect substations in CPP's older area and also serve larger commercial customers. We have over 440 miles of 2,400 volt transmission and distribution lines. That voltage was used primarily in the original parts of the city that CPP served. And those are the lines that you typically find in people's backyards or on tree lawns in like the Collinwood section in the old Brooklyn area. It's the job of CPP's operations section employees to maintain those lines and to repair them when necessary. The amount of overhead and underground lines grow daily as we extend facilities to serve new buildings that are being built or to serve buildings that want to switch from CEI to Cleveland Public Power. Now, outages are never a welcome thing by our customers, as well as we do not welcome them, because the customers don't like the outage because of the inconvenience. And quite frankly, when the power is out, our revenue meters don't spin. So there's no benefit to us when that happens. Most outages are caused by external forces. Probably the greatest cause of outages are vehicles hitting and wiping out poles. Sometimes the vehicle will hit the pole and cause wires to slap together or to fall down. And this is especially true at about 2:30 in the morning. There was a definite correlation between the closing of restaurants and bars for COVID-19 pandemic and a decrease in the number of poles that were hit during that time period. Underground facilities, while protected from vehicle strikes, are subject to being hit by contractors digging or driving objects into the ground. CPP belongs to the Ohio Underground Protection Service and has a contractor, One Call, who is employed to mark our underground facilities in a timely fashion upon request. So everyone should call 811 before you start digging. Tree limbs falling on wires or taking wires down is another frequent cause of outages. CPP is waging a war against that occurrence by trimming tree limbs in the vicinity of electric wires. We have 2 tree trimming crews and are looking to increase that to 4 crews next year. We also employ a tree trimming contractor, Van Kuren, who provides 5 crews to help us assist in that effort. With the help of City Council last year, we doubled our tree trimming budget, and within a short period of time, doubling that effort of tree trimming paid off in less frequent outages. Some causes are hard to predict or detect. Underground cables, while designed to be operated in underground, can fault, and water infiltration does occur into those cables occasionally, as well as into splices. And while those outages are less frequent, they do take longer to repair. And sometimes an outage can be caused by overloaded equipment. Because individual customers are not required to inform us when they install additional equipment in their houses, that first hot day of the summer usually brings a few burned up transformers, as some homeowners have installed air conditioning equipment in preparation for the summer. One cause of outages that could be easily prevented is the release of Mylar balloons. Oddly enough, they are one of our causes of outages because they have a metallic surface and they are filled with helium. So when they release, they rise up into the sky, and they also float up into our high voltage lines, shorting out those lines and causing the breaker at the substation to trip. Other causes of outages include birds and squirrels that come in contact with 2 faces of our electric lines. Sometimes squirrels playing on the top of transformers that are mounted on poles will find themselves between 2 lines, and then they become the shortest path between those 2 wires. We also have outages due to rodents occasionally getting into substations, electrocuting themselves, and shorting out electric equipment in the process. And I know a lot of us say, what are the odds of getting struck by lightning? Well, our overhead lines do get struck by lightning occasionally. We do have lightning arresters, which normally shunt the power strike to ground, but occasionally the strength of the strike is such that it blows up the lightning arrestor and then causes the breaker at the substation to trip because of the surge. And of course, because there's 2 electric companies in town, any one of the scenarios that I talked about can happen to one company and have a domino effect on the other one. A tree limb that brings down a CEI wire can cause that wire to fall into a CPP wire, and that can cause outages to Cleveland Public Power customers, as well as the original outage, which caused an outage to CEI's customers. And of course, that happens vice versa. There are members and areas of the operations team that I didn't get a chance to highlight during the presentation, but we all pull together to take care of our customers. As Commissioner Perry has said, CPP is small enough to care, but big enough to compete. Hopefully this presentation has given you a better picture of what CPP operations does to keep the electricity on and make sure that it's available to you at the flip of a switch. That's the end of my presentation.
Director, anything you want to add?
Okay.
You're muted.
All right.
I'm sorry. I think Rich outlined it pretty well. I have nothing to add at this time, Mr. Chairman. We would welcome any questions.
All right, I just have a couple. And one of the slides, it says CPP distribution overview interconnection with First Energy. A lot of people believe that it's just either CPP or First Energy. But there's a sort of a connection between the two different companies. If you can explain what the interconnection with First Energy is.
The interconnection with First Energy is the pathway by which all of the power that we purchase, regardless of the original source, comes through. So the power that we have an ownership interest in Prairie State, for example, in Illinois, leaves the plant and travels through transmission lines of various electric utilities. It'll travel through Illinois, through Indiana. When it gets into Ohio, it gets into part of the First Energy system, probably at Toledo Edison, and then eventually finds its way into one of the 4 interconnections that we have with First Energy. Now, electricity being what it is, it flows where it wants to. And quite frankly, a lot of the purchases that are made, the actual electrons never make it to Cleveland, but electrons that have been purchased in an equal amount do make it into Cleveland's system. So it's not always the case that when you purchase power from a source, the physical electrons make it, but generating stations along the way will ramp up and make sure that the power that is purchased contractually does flow into Cleveland and is available to our customers.
So in some sense, we have to be collaborating with First Energy in order to get electricity. And I'm assuming it's vice versa for them as well.
We do, and actually the entity that coordinates all that is PJM, which is a regional
Right.
transmission coordinator. And there's also one called MISO, which is to the west of us. So for example, the power that comes in from Illinois actually comes into the MISO system before it comes into PJM. And they actually do all the coordination between the various electric utilities that are within that region.
Right, and we learned about PJM last week. A lot of council members are relatively new to utilities. And if you could just, in a nutshell, briefly explain the Southern Transmission Line, which I'm sure that a lot of the council members have heard the term, but may not understand exactly what the Southern Transmission Line is. So if you could just reiterate again, the under construction new Southern Transmission Line.
Sure. As you can see on the slide, the Southern Transmission Line will close a loop which we have formed around a good part of our system. It is built at 138,000 volts. Most of it is built overhead. All the red portion is overhead, but you can see this small blue portion over here is underground, and that's actually the portion that leaves the area at Harbor Denison and comes down Denison as an underground facility over to our Ridge Road station. What that means is we could lose any one of the interconnections, be they Lake Road, Ridge Road, or Pofolk, and still have the ability to serve our customers probably without even a blink of their electricity. If you recall, when we had the outage on the west side, the problem was we had this underground facility being repaired, and CEI lost its line between our Ridge Road substation and their Clinton substation, which is located down about here. As a result, we had no other way to feed our customers. Had the Southern Transmission Line been in place, the power would have continued to flow into Ridge Road and then back to Division, and none of our customers would have been out of service at that point.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman,
Ye-
I wanna
Yes, sir.
add that it is certainly going to allow us to have more redundancy, reliability, and as it loops the system, in short.
And then would that also potentially in the future allow us to expand our service area to the west side, the far west side?
Well, it could, because if you did something out at the airport, which would be out here, you would tie back to Ridge Road. There's a railroad right of way that runs here. And you would construct a line from Ridge Road to the airport, and then you would establish an interconnection with First Energy at the airport. They've got a number of 138,000 volt lines there. And so then all of a sudden your feed to the far west side, the airport and the far west side would be fed from this way as well as back from Ridge, and not having to necessarily just depend on this line, but we could actually feed it across the valley, if you will, from Pofolk, should this line become disabled.
That wouldn't be as easy to do if we didn't have the southern transmission line, correct?
It would not be as reliable, because you would then be counting on this path here as the only path to provide you with redundancy.
So Rich,
All right.
would we have to look at infrastructure, costs associated with infrastructure to run it?
We would, as I indicated, it would most likely and most probable route would be to run it down railroad right of way. I believe it's the same right of way that the RTA runs down, and we're pretty much familiar seeing that railroad right of way as we drive down I-71. And then there would be a substation that would need to be constructed at the west terminus here, either possibly on the grounds of Hopkins or something nearby.
Yeah, do we know the cost associated with that type of capital investment?
I don't off the top of my head. I think we have looked at that from time to time, but I suspect that it's been at least probably a good 10 to 20 years before we've looked at it. And so
Right.
any pricing we have would have to be updated.
Okay, and it is safe to say that we would probably need to do a cost benefit analysis as it relates to that capital investment and then the customers that we would gain as a result of it?
I would think so. That was the approach that we did when we did the last expansion, was we evaluated what the potential customers would be and what revenue could be obtained from those customers versus the cost of the construction of facilities.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Right. And then what was the cost of the new southern transmission line?
Maybe 26 to 30 million? I'm not sure.
All right. Right around there,
Yeah.
give or take.
We have the number?
All right. And then
26 million.
26 million, okay.
okay. And then you'd mentioned CPP substations. So I'm assuming everybody knows what our big facilities are. Can you just explain? I see the furthest one west is on West 73rd, but can you just explain what the substation is? Are they staffed or what they look like?
Well, actually, the furthest west is on Western Avenue. It's West 112th and Western, just a little south of, or just a little north of Berea Road there. They are all unmanned facilities. They are basically points of transformation where we take higher voltage electricity and step it down to voltage that is utilized by the customers. In the case of the residential customers in the old area, we step it down to 2400 volts, which is in your backyard, and then transformers on individual poles in backyards and front yards step it down to 120 or 240 volts. Other substations serve as intermediate points. For example, our West 41st Street substation, we have 138,000 volt service that comes into there. It then gets stepped down to 11,000 volt, but then that 11,000 volt goes out to probably a dozen substations all throughout the west side, as well as to large customers. And then at those individual neighborhood substations, it then gets transformed and step down to 2400 volts. But they are all unmanned. They're basically switches, switch gear, if you will, and transformers primarily.
All right. And just to let you know, I don't see the Western Avenue one on there.
I don't know why that, it should have been right below Waterloo. Maybe it got cut off in the transition. It's this one out here, where my cursor is
All
hovering.
right.
I apologize.
Okay. And then my last, before we open it up to questions from my colleagues, is your tree trimming crew. Are they all certified arborists?
They are not. Our tree trimming crews used to work for Urban Forestry. Van Kuren, which is our contractor, has an arborist as part of their contract and as part of their staff. He directs the work, and he directs what the prudent trimming procedure should be in the various circumstances that they come into. So the work is done at the Van Kuren stuff is done at the direction of an arborist. And as I said, our two crews worked for Urban Forestry at one time.
And then when CPP goes to trim a tree, I have seen work of another company who trims trees on the far west side and even the near west side, where they come in and completely obliviate a tree, right? Where they just cut the middle out of the tree just to trim the trees. Do our tree trimming crews do everything they can in order to aesthetically keep the tree canopy look of the street and not butcher our trees and half kill them?
Our crews try to strike a balance. Obviously, you need to keep the branches away from the wires, otherwise they'll trip during storms, and even light winds can do that. We strive for about a 5-year cut, so our crews and our contractors are instructed not to make drastic cuts. I think the other folks are shooting for a 7 to 10 year cut, and so sometimes they look like goalposts coming down the street. We've had pretty good luck. We've actually, from time to time, received praise from the work that our crews have done, and our contractors' crews for trying to get the job done without butchering the trees. I mean, obviously, some part of the tree is going to have to get cut away in order to make clearance. By making less drastic cuts, we do have to come back more frequently, but that's just part of what we've always done, and will continue to do.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
I
Director.
just want to add that Van Kuren, since we brought them on board, has done a pretty good job with cleaning up after themselves, making sure that they can cut away and leave it in a pretty decent shape. And so we make note of that all the time, and we tell them as they do that work, unless it's emergency work, that we pride ourselves on doing that. And I think thus far they've been doing a pretty good job with how they've been dealing with the tree trimming.
Even if our trouble crews have to trim trees occasionally during a storm, we'll make sure that the next day our tree trimming crews come back and pick up any branches that were left. Obviously, the trouble truck doesn't have the ability to transport branches back to the yard, and we want them to keep on restoring service. But we make a note of it. Our dispatcher is informed, and the next day our tree trimming crews will come back and pick up the branches and chip and take it away.
All right, great. We're going to open up to questions from my colleagues. In order, I have Councilman Brancatelli, Slayton, and Polensek. And before we do that, though, I do want to recognize that we're also joined by Council President Kevin Kelly today. And Council President, if you have anything you'd like to say before we move into questions, or if you have any questions.
No, thank you. This has been very informative. I'm really looking for the Southern Transmission Line to solve a lot of the service problems that we've historically had over the years. So I'm just eagerly listening and watching what's happening. So thank you.
Thank you, Council President. Councilman Brancatelli.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and certainly thank you. This has been a series of very informative committee meetings that you've been holding, and piles of information that we're all digesting. Just a couple quick questions on outages. And I don't need to know where the auto crashes after 2:30 happen more on the west side than the east side, but we won't need to discern that. We know they're mostly west side. But the one note that was raised around the Mylar balloons is a significant cause of outages. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Well, it is a cause of outage more than you would think. A lot of times people will celebrate weddings, anniversaries, baptisms. They'll gather in front of a church, and at the end of the event, they release the balloons, and the balloons will go up as they are helium filled and wrap themselves into the wires. And since they are Mylar balloons are metallized, they cause the lines to short and will trip the breakers. A lot of times they're not that hard to find. We drive around and we see, a wedding just dispersing. You look up and there are the balloons. And so we have to clear them off the line, and then we can re-energize the breaker. Usually the outage doesn't take long. It's more so how long does it take to find where the balloons are. But it does cause outages.
And I've seen in other cities where they've banned release of large Mylar balloons. Is that something that we've considered here?
Well, we don't do the legislation here. It would certainly make our life easier and would cause a fewer number of outages, but that basically is a decision that City Council would have to make.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't ban Mylar balloons altogether. I would probably suggest that we just ban the large releases, which I've witnessed firsthand in some areas that it doesn't fit with all the overhead lines that we have around. So those are all my questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Councilman Brancatelli. Councilman Slife.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the director, to Mr. Barton, through the chair. At the beginning of the presentation, you noted it's a 300 megawatt system. Is that the peak capacity, or is that hottest day of the year we're able to bring in 300 megawatts and everyone's pumping their AC? But I would imagine we typically operate well below that.
Well,
Go ahead, Rich.
I think the 300 comes from our historical peak has been 331 megawatts. With the 4 interconnections, from a design standpoint, I believe we're good up around 420 or so. Obviously, it depends on where the load shows up. If it's equally balanced throughout the system, I think those 4 interconnections can probably accommodate somewhere from 420 to maybe up to 450 at the most. So, but the number 300 comes from our historical peak, which is 331.
Thank you. What's our typical on a day like today? We're not pumping our AC. I guess I'm interested in understanding the excess capacity that the system has. That's really the origin of the question.
On a day like today, we're probably averaging around 210 megawatts, quite frankly, and that's what you see typically in the spring, in the fall. The load will get down. I've seen it get down as low as 159, 160 on a very mild spring or fall evening. During the summertime, most of the time, the load is fluctuating around 260, 280. We start pushing 300 when you have 90-degree days, especially if you have consecutive days that have 90-degree weather.
There's a friendly public servant announcement to remember that when we turn our ACs down to 65, it uses more power, pumps more cool in the air, and as being sustainability is an approach in many different ways. I want to remind the listeners and my members that that's one way we can all help fight climate change. Then, so moving then into the transmission substations, there's the 4 of them. So let's just say 400 megawatts, that those basically come down to 100 megawatt transmission substations. Give or take.
No, they're actually rated higher than that, but electricity being what it does, it flows where it wants to. And a lot of how it flows is not even dependent on what we or our customers are doing, but can be influenced on what's going on the First Energy system and even beyond. So if First Energy takes a line out of service for maintenance, or if they have an emergency, it can affect what direction and what interconnection the power that flows into our system comes from.
On the map along the southern transmission line, there's the proposed Harvard substation. That's a transmission substation?
That's on hold at the moment. That would have been a distribution substation.
Okay. And then, so then for the distribution substations, there's obviously, we're working on creating a loop system for the transmission. To what degree are the distribution substations interconnected with each other? I mean, if a tree falls and a line goes down, is power able to come from the other direction from another substation, or does each substation kind of operate as its own micro network?
No, in general, they're all interconnected. We actually have 2 networks. We have the old Brooklyn network and we have the Collinwood network, where the substations actually back each other up on a lower voltage side. But each one of our substations has at least 2 sources of power. So if a line goes out, we can feed it from the other line. In addition to that, all along the neighborhoods, there are points at which we can tie feeders from one substation to another. So for example, and we actually had a real life situation where we lost our East Industrial substation. We were able to pick up the entire substation by tying it to other feeders from our Southeast substation. So when we build, we build redundancy because you can never say never. And just when you think you might be safe, something's going to happen. Someone's going to hit something that'll take more than one facility out, and you have to have more than one path for electricity to flow so that you can continue to serve your customers or to restore their service in a reasonable amount of time.
Sure, thank you. And through the chair, is that process of transferring, is that automated or is that manual?
Some of it is automated. Some of it is manual. We made reference to what we call ATLs, or automatic throwover switches. Many of our customers, our larger customers, when they lose one feed, it automatically throws over via the switch to the alternate feed, and all they see is a several second blink of lights. That also occurs at some of our substations, a good number of our substations, where we have switch gear that are both tied and on, and if one of them has a fault, the other one, it will trip, but the other one will continue to carry the load. So
then in cases of kind of longer outages at a residence, maybe this is anecdotal, but is that a case of where the downline's radial line, there is no loop, it's just kind of the end of the line, or is it just the delay is the process of it being an instance where it's a manual fix and you have to go out and physically turn a switch and then you can, restore power while you're repairing?
Some of it's manual, and in the case of where you have wires down, you're balancing the time it takes to switch the feeder versus the time it takes to put the line up, and sometimes the time frame is similar, and so you go ahead and put the line up. Where it looks like it's going to be an extended outage, we will then isolate the outage, open up certain switches and close other switches to restore as much of the service as we can, and probably just leaving people in the immediate area of the incident to be without power.
And then my last question, Mr. Chair, kind of back to the hypothetical situation of bringing CPP further west. So let's imagine that we're able to put in another transmission substation somewhere around Hopkins. That's has 100 megawatts. It's runs parallel and system-wise to the rest of them. I would imagine we'd probably need 4 or 5 additional distribution substations in West Park just to be able to do the step down to actually serve the residents, or would that be able to be fed off of the existing distribution substations.
Director or Commissioner?
You would need probably at least 2, possibly 3, possibly one in the northern section, one in the central area, and one in the southern portion of the area that we're talking about. With the substations of the type that we used in the southeast expansion, when you have a higher voltage distribution, you can cover larger areas with fewer substations. So, but I would say probably at least 2, possibly 3.
And that's maybe like half an acre, something like that.
Depends on the design. There's certain technology where you can do compact substations. You've got space available. Obviously, the cost benefit to that is it's cheaper if you can take the space. But there's various approaches you can take.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Councilman Slife. Councilman Polensek. Councilman, you have to unmute yourself.
Hear me?
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Going back, I want to follow up on Councilman Slife's line of questioning. As we know, there's one customer allegedly in Ward 17. Is that correct? To whoever can answer, Mr. Chairman.
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay. And in 16, how many customers are there?
I didn't bring my list of customers by ward with me, unfortunately.
Well,
We have around 100.
okay, you can almost count them on your hands and toes. Okay, so the question is again following up on Councilman Slife, and the big elephant in the room, the 2 big elephants out there had been the airport and then all the ancillary facilities around it. Why can't the airport, since it is a public entity owned by the city of Cleveland, an enterprise account, why can't the airport cover the cost of the expansion out to their facility?
Mr. Barton or Director?
Well, I'll take a stab at it. Much like Cleveland Public Power couldn't cover the cost of water pollution controls installation of a sewer line, being an enterprise fund, I think they're restricted to spending money on activities that are related to their core business, which would not be electricity.
But, and again, I understand that, but I would ask through the chair to the director and to the law department that I'd like to get some clarification on that, because that's been something that's been kicked around over the years. And I don't think the council has ever gotten a satisfactory answer, Mr. Chairman. We're going to service a city building complex, the airport. And as a result of that, we're going to be able to provide other services to other quote unquote city facilities in that region. I think it's something we need to explore. It would benefit the entire system, obviously, because it gives us ability to purchase larger blocks of power. And I just think it's something that the administration needs to take a good, serious look at. Okay, that's number one. Number two, what is the overall condition of the substations? If you were to rate them, what are the overall conditions of them, Mr. Chairman, to the director, to Mr. Barton?
Let me start by saying that, and I'll let Mr. Barton address it, but whatever we know now, we will know better once the condition assessment is complete.
Okay.
So that we have a really good idea of what the condition is. But that is really the next step to all of this, is understanding what shape our system is in. We know it's aging. And with that, I'll turn it over to Rich if he has any additional information, but obviously the condition assessment will tell us a whole lot more.
The only thing I'd say is it varies across the map. There are some substations that are in really good shape. There are some that need attention. Some of them are old and that doesn't necessarily mean that they're in bad shape. It just means that the technology is not the current technology. Some of the parts our electricians are having to manufacture sometimes to get back into to get a part back into service. But we do maintain them on a regular basis, and they do continue to serve the customers. As I said, they could be in better shape. It's a balance of funds and what we have.
Okay. So, so once your facility assessment is completed, we'll have an idea of exactly what substations, Mr. Chairman, to the director, to the assistant commissioner, what needs to be quote unquote enhanced, improved, et cetera, correct?
That's correct, to the chair, to the councilman.
Okay, because obviously we're all aware of the problems that we've experienced with reliability, with power outages, et cetera. Those have become, you know, very more prevalent, I would say, than in the past, especially from what I'm hearing from some of my West Side colleagues. So I'll stop on that point. I want to just revert back to the issue with the reasons for the outages, and then specifically as it pertains to tree trimming. So I don't know if the director's not aware of this, but I'm sure Rich is. I had a problem last week with Van Kuren, excuse me, and their tree trimming operation along Lakeshore Boulevard on the northeast side. I don't know how many phone calls I received by residents just outraged about not only the way they were trimming the trees, but then the debris they were leaving after they trimmed. I was told then, and please correct me if I was given improper information, that there was no arborist on scene indicating to the crews what they should cut and not cut. Can that be clarified?
To the councilman through the chair, we did investigate that situation. That crew was not working for us. They were actually working for Northeast Regional Sewer District. I'm not sure whether their contract requires an arborist to be with the crew or not. Ours does. And we know for a fact that our crews are overseen by an arborist. They should, we haven't had those problems with our crews. I don't know why that crew should be less diligent in terms of themselves, but
Mr. Chairman,
they were not working for us. And like I said, I don't know whether they.
So again, this is the first I'm hearing that. So you're telling me that the crews that were trimming trees along the eastern portion of Lakeshore Boulevard, near the Euclid border, those were not, that was not Van Kuren working for CPP.
That's correct. We just found out yesterday, late yesterday. And so we haven't had a chance to get back to you. But we did find that they were working for Northeast Regional Sewer District.
Well, then I need to get something through the chair to the director and to Rich. I need to get an email or something so I can go right to Northeast Regional Sewer District, because what they did to these trees was outrageous, and there was no excuse for this. I mean, they could have done a much better job. And see, again, this is where the council members are on the receiving end. When they get this flat top or this massive V cut in the tree, and on Villaview Road, I mean, they've cut the trees so severely that I think the trees are in danger of falling over to the one side, because so much has been lopped off one side, and now you got this massive growth hanging over Villaview Road. There just has to be, if we're gonna trim it, you just can't cut the V. You got to make the tree symmetrical. You just can't leave this massive one side of it hanging out over the roadway. So that's something, Mr. Chairman, that I think if need be, I'd be more than willing to sit down and figure out, or get some people to sit down where we can figure out what we can do better. Because in the long run, that tree's going to come down. That tree's going to be struck by trucks, because the way now it's leaning. And so we have to do a better job of figuring out how we're going to trim trees and take council people off the hot seat. As I told, God knows how many people who called me last week, you know, I'm not out there trimming the tree. I'm not out there determining what limb should come down, but I'm looking to someone who is responsible for that, who should be working with those contractors to make sure that if they're working for us, that they're doing the best job possible and are not destroying these trees. We all know how strongly the council feels about maintaining our tree canopy in the city. I feel I was out Friday morning planting 30 trees along Lakeshore Boulevard through the Western Reserve Land Conservatory. So you know, I'm passionate about trees and about planting, but I want to make sure that we are not, the city, Mr. Chairman, is not leading to the demise of our tree canopy, especially through Cleveland Public Power and Division of Forestry.
All the more reason that we need our tree commission reestablished in the city of Cleveland.
Mr. Chairman, I would concur with you. I would concur with you on that. We've got the tree canopy is critical to maintaining quality neighborhoods, and the tree canopy, we all know, is in danger in the city of Cleveland. That's obvious to all. So on that note, my main questions have been answered, and I look forward to working with you, Mr. Chairman, and the administration on this whole issue of tree trimming and or removal. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Director, why would the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District be out trimming trees? Do we have any idea why they would be doing that? What's the need for the sewer district to be trimming trees?
I'm not aware of the reason. Rich, are you aware of why they were out there? I mean, obviously they can have issues where you have to trim around trims to, if they have something in the way obstructing it, or some type of capital project that's going on that requires that.
We'll follow up on it. Our first goal was to find out who was doing the hacking and why they were doing the hacking. We will check with Van Kuren to see if we can get any insight from them as to what
Is
purpose.
any other plants in that area? Do they have easterly, westerly, southerly, any plants in the area?
They have 100 at 140th. They've got a plant. I'm not sure whether any of this might be related to tunnel work or something.
Well, I'm thinking power lines coming into no?
Not really. The power lines to their 140th Street facility coming underground.
Okay.
Of that facility.
In addition to finding out if they were out there, can you also find out who gave them permission to trim the city trees? If it was part of a capital project or what they were doing out there. I mean, we can't have any just known entity coming in and just hacking up our trees. So we'd like to find out who gave them permission or to be out there as well.
We'll
right.
find information for you.
And if you could forward that to me as well as Councilman Polensek, I'd appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Polensek. Councilman McCormack.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I would just say on the trimming issues, while utilities are authorized to do tree trimming through the Utilities Commission of Ohio, they're required to have an obstruction permit through the city of Cleveland. So one of the ways that we can, if there is an issue with the utility, check to see if they have an obstruction permit. And if they don't, they're not permitted to be operating in that right away. We found that out when another power company who shall not be named, was trimming trees in Tremont, Ohio City, butchering trees in Tremont, Ohio City. And some of those trees had to be removed because of how poorly that they were butchered. Was not trimming. I have, as the director noted, I've had actually quite a positive experience with Van Kuren and CPP's trimming. They seem to be much more thoughtful in their trimming than the other power company that provides Northeast Ohio power. So just 2 cents there. Chair, I just kind of have a basic question. It's curious when we think about operations and infrastructure investment, how are we factoring in the transition to renewables and the distributed resources when we are considering, these type of operations and setup? How are we factoring renewable energy,
Director?
or we diversify our, power sources in the future?
Yeah, to the councilman, we are certainly looking at renewable energy. As you know, the portfolio is very diverse, but we are looking and taking a look at more solar coming up. Also looking at solar battery storage is something that is of interest. So as we look at renewable energy, we're factoring in all of these things, because obviously renewable energy, there's a cost associated with it, and some of it sometimes it's high price power. So we want to make sure that when we look at solar as a renewable energy, that it would be less costly to our customers. So that's certainly something that we're looking at going forward. And right now, working with sustainability and Chief Wood regarding that initiative as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And, I just think about moving into the future, ensuring that these systems are ready to, onboard more and more renewable energy. Chair, I just also wanted to note, we had in 2018, as the director knows well, we had a significant outages on the near west side through, and I just want to recognize the director. He and I had quite a few meetings back then, and he put forth a aggressive maintenance plan, and it's made a huge difference. The amount of outages that we've had is dramatically down, and so I know the director kind of spearheaded that the tree trimming and I forget all the names of excuse me, but the pieces that were replaced. He sent me a list of it at one point. I don't remember what they were, but I just wanted to acknowledge the director on that one. That preventative maintenance went a long way in Ward 3. And so, it's something that I just wanted to note and say that preventative maintenance works, and thank the director for his kind of bold action when we were really struggling in Ward 3 a couple of years ago.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilman. Director, operation-wise, CPP is running well?
CPP is running the best that it can, given the certain circumstances that we're dealing with, keeping in mind that we are maintaining our system the best that we can. And we do know that we need to get this condition assessment done so we can kind of get our hands around how well our system condition is, so that we know what capital investment is needed going forward. But right now, and I give kudos to CPP, we keep the lights on, we keep the power going no matter what it takes. And of course, with that aging infrastructure that we have, substations, transformers, and all those other things, I think we're doing the best that we can under the circumstances. So I say that we're operating pretty well right now, but certainly we can be operating better.
All right, and since you mentioned aging infrastructure, I just want to remind everybody next week's topic, and it's our 7th of 7, is capital projects. And before we sign off, I have 2 requests, Director. One is, can we make sure for next week that we have a list of any capital projects that were completed within the last, say, 20 years with CPP, and a list of anything that you feel is on the horizon. If you had a magic wand and had a wish list, not that it could be fulfilled, but some things that need to actually be done.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to, did you say 20 years?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is
We'll
that,
try to get you what we can.
okay, well, just whatever you can get us.
Would
I
the
don't know
last
how much
10 years
capital.
suffice? Would the last 10 years suffice?
We'll
try to get you as much as we can. How about that?
suffice. And then today's presentation, which again, kudos to whoever put this on. It was, or whoever put this together. It was well done. Did have a request, though, to get these as standalone documents and not in a PowerPoint PDF. It gets a little blurry to read. So if we could just get these as just individual slides and not in a PowerPoint sometime in the near future, we would appreciate that.
We can handle that, Mr. Chairman.
All right. That being said, thanks to everybody who's participating, and I look forward to next week's topic on October 13th, which is capital projects. Thank you. We'll call this meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay.